Title: My sister and I finished medical school together, but our parents paid off her student loans while ignoring mine. She deserves it more, honey. When they attended her debt-free celebration, they had a little surprise waiting. The letter that said, everything medical school wasn't easy for either of us. Natalie and I studied together in the same cramped dorms, pulled the same brutal overnight rotations, collapsed into the same coffee-stained library booths at 2 a.m., while memorizing pharmacology terms we'd forget the moment the exam was over. She was always a little more charming. I was more precise. She made professors laugh. I made flashcards. But we both earned it, every damn step. So when we graduated, me with $274,000 in student debt, and Natalie with roughly the same, I assumed so foolishly that the struggle had at least been equal, until Mom forwarded me the email. From Dad, subject, Nat's loan surprise. She's going to be so happy. We wired the final payment today. She won't owe a dime going into her residency. Don't you think she deserves it more, honey? After all, she's always been the one to make us proud. I read it 3 times. Then I sat very still. It wasn't just that they had paid off her loans. It was the word that gutted me. Deserves. As if my decade of study, my perfect scores, my long shifts at underfunded clinics, my quiet reliability hadn't been enough. As if I had somehow earned the crushing debt they watched me drown under in silence. They hadn't even told me. I had to find out through a forwarded email that wasn't meant for me. And Natalie? She never said a word. A week later, she sent a fancy evite. Join us to celebrate Natalie's incredible achievement, debt-free and ready to heal the world. My parents were hosting it. At a winery, they had invited me, their less deserving daughter, to raise a glass to the golden child they had chosen to save. I wasn't angry, not in the fire and ash way. I was cold, and that is a far more dangerous temperature. I RSP'd. Yes, picked out a sleek black dress, and began planning the surprise they never saw coming. A toast to the chosen one. The winery looked exactly as I expected. Glass walls, soft jazz, rows of charcuterie boards curated like art. My parents had spared no expense, not for Natalie's education, but to show off that they had erased it. Natalie wore white, of course, like it was a second wedding. Her smile was polished, camera-ready, her hair professionally curled, her nails French-tipped. I wore black. Not a dress of mourning, but precision. Clean lines, subtle heels. The kind of black that didn't blend in, but warned. When I walked in, my mother's eyes widened with surprise. "Oh, you made it." "Of course," I said, leaning in to air-kiss her cheek. "Wouldn't miss it." My father clapped me on the back awkwardly. "Drinks are on the house. You deserve a glass. After all, you both made it through." I smiled. The kind of smile that meant, you're going to regret saying that. People mingled, toasted. Natalie floated between clusters of guests like a celebrity. I spotted the custom cake, white fondant with gold lettering. "Congratulations, Natalie. Debt-free and MD. No mention of me. Not even a shared photo from graduation on the memory board by the bar. It was like I didn't exist, except I did, and I had brought a gift." When the toasts began, my dad raised a glass. To Natalie, our brilliant daughter who never gave up, who made us proud every step of the way. She worked hard, and she earned this. There it was again. Earned. I took a slow sip of wine and waited. The microphone made its way to me. People smiled politely, unsure what the other daughter would say. Even Natalie looked uncomfortable now, a flicker of tension beneath her glossy exterior. I stepped forward, lifted my glass, and said calmly, "To my sister Natalie, who not only graduated med school, but taught me the most valuable lesson of all." The room stilled. To survive being invisible, you must learn how to see yourself. Because sometimes, The people who are supposed to lift you up are too busy framing someone else's picture. There was a long pause, then a few claps, awkward, confused. I smiled and added, "You'll find your surprise at the back table." Heads turned. Behind the gift table sat a man in a navy blazer, neatly groomed. A laptop open before him. He gave me a short nod. He was an IRS auditor, hired privately, given a folder I had assembled over 2 months of digging. A folder filled with unreported monetary transfers, cash gifts over the legal threshold, and false deductions, all tied to my parents' extravagant payments for Natalie's debt, funneled through accounts they thought no one would ever question. But I had access. They forgot that. The man quietly approached my father at the bar, introduced himself, slipped a card into his hand, began a calm, private conversation as my mother paled beside him, as if they hadn't soaked the house in gasoline long before I ever stepped inside with a lighter. I didn't respond. She ended the message with something that stuck in my mind, though. "You could have just talked to me, Claire. Why did you have to embarrass us like that?" I stared at my phone for a long time, and then I whispered, "Because you never listened when I didn't." That weekend, I drove out to the coast. No emails, no phone, just air, water, and a view that didn't demand anything of me. I walked along the cliffs, letting the breeze tear through my coat, and for the first time in years, I felt light. Not because I had hurt them, but because I had finally stopped letting them hurt me. I had rewritten the story, not with cruelty, but with clarity. They wrote me off. I wrote them out. Redefining the record. A week after the party, I went to the bank. The woman behind the desk smiled as I slid a folder toward her. Documents for a newly created irrevocable trust. "Education forgiveness clause?" she asked. I nodded. I was creating a small fund, $50,000, accumulated from years of overtime and silent saving. Not much, but enough for one deserving woman in medicine each year. Someone with no family backing her. Someone like me. The trust bore a name that mattered. The Claire Green Resilience Award. Not a memorial. Not a foundation named after my parents or some family name that didn't include me. Mine. Every recipient would know it came from someone who clawed her way through medical school alone and came out stronger. Later, I drafted a brief press release. The university's alumni page agreed to feature it. Alumna establishes fund for first-generation female medical students. Honors resilience over privilege. The article listed my name, a short quote from me, and nothing else. No mention of Natalie. No parents. No celebration. I didn't send it to them. I didn't need to. I knew someone would forward it. They always did when I made something of myself. Quietly, inconveniently, without their help. Around the same time, my mother emailed me. A full apology this time. Or at least what she thought passed as one. "We realize now how hurtful our choices were. You've always been so independent. We didn't think you needed as much. We never meant to make you feel less than." I stared at the screen. Less than. I didn't feel less than. They treated me less than. That was the difference. I didn't respond. Instead, I removed them as beneficiaries from everything. My life insurance, my retirement account, my professional associations, replaced with colleagues, friends, people who had stood beside me during my most invisible years. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it because you don't leave legacies to people who never invested in you. Natalie sent me a final message. Short, hollow. "You win." I almost laughed, because this was never a competition. It was survival. I stopped needing closure the day I realized I didn't need them to validate what I had earned. They had thrown a celebration for one daughter, while ignoring the other. Now, they were watching that other daughter build something far bigger, far more lasting, without their money, without their name, and without their approval. The debt they never repaid spring came slowly that year, the kind that doesn't announce itself with flowers, but with light. Longer days, less bitterness in the wind. That's how peace feels too. Not loud, just softer. I spent most of my mornings on the hospital roof between shifts, coffee in hand, watching residents scurry below. Some days I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come. Other days, I just breathed. No noise from home, no guilt texts, no invitations to awkward birthdays or manufactured holidays. They had stopped calling, not because they understood, but because I no longer gave them a place to speak. The audit had finalized. Fines, back taxes, no criminal charges. My lawyer said they'd cut a deal. But the real punishment, they now understood that they were no longer in control of the narrative. They could no longer shape who I was in front of others. Could no longer brag about both daughters, when one of them had been left to drown and learned to swim alone. I attended Natalie's hospital gala that fall. Not out of forgiveness, out of resolve. I walked in as a guest speaker, invited by the board, not the family. When I took the stage, Natalie froze in the corner. "The road to medicine is paved unevenly," I began. "Some of us get handed maps. Others build the road while walking it. I built mine, and I know others are still building theirs." I never looked her way. I didn't need to, because she, and they, were finally irrelevant to my story. Afterward, a med student approached me. "Dr. Green," she said shyly, "I just got the Resilience Award. I read your story. It's the reason I didn't drop out last semester." I thanked her, not because she praised me, but because she reminded me why I kept going. It was never about revenge. That was just the byproduct. The real win was this. I had finally stopped trying to prove myself to people who were never going to choose me, and I had chosen myself instead. That night, I drove home with the windows down. The wind was warm, the sky quiet. No more letters, no more dinners, no more pretending. Only this, a life on my terms, paid in full. You are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think. Tap that subscribe button to join Veiled Revenge, where we share tales that heal, inspire, and remind you that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the most beautiful new beginning. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes, it's just about getting better.